All right, everyone, if you would please go ahead and get seated. We are going to go ahead and start with our program this evening. Oh, yes, I'll turn that on. She's so relaxing. No, don't. All right, welcome and thank you all for being here tonight at our program at the Delta Township District Library. My name is Becca Rusick and I am the head of adult services here. A few notes before we jump into things. Bathrooms are located back in the lobby there. There's also a drinking fountain out there as well. The doors will be closed just so we can keep the sound here in the room, but they will be open for you to go in and out of. So don't worry about that. I'd like to thank Strange Matter Coffee for donating the refreshments tonight. Please make sure to help yourself to some hot coffee or tea and a snack at our back tables. Please also check out the literature that we have available on our back tables as well. And now without further ado, I would like to introduce our event host for the evening, Prince Solis. Prince is a co-founder and president of the Justice League. A Lansing native and a descendant of Mississippi Delta sharecroppers, Prince graduated from Holt High School, attending Lansing Community College, and earned a bachelor's in professional communications from Siena Heights University. His career spans roles in corporate and nonprofit institutions where he uses inclusive frameworks to promote equitable and empowering working environments. As president of the Justice League, Prince actively leverages his network within the greater Lansing region to promote the mission of the Justice League. All right, and with that, I will turn things on over. If you want to walk with us, just talk about it.
All right. Happy Black History Month, everyone. Happy Black History Month. Okay. All right, first, I'll start by saying thank you to Becca and to the Delta Township Library. This is our first time engaging this side of town and this community, and so we're very excited to be here and having them host us. Also, another thank you to Strange Matter Coffee for providing the refreshments. We appreciate it. All right, before we hop into our panel discussion, I want to provide just a brief overview of how tonight's going to go. So, first we're going to learn about the mission and the vision of the Stables Community Foundation, and then we will delve into just a little bit of the progress and development of the Justice League, and we're going to spend the bulk of our time with the panel discussion because I really want you to be able to hear from our panelists. There's lots of stories that I think you'll all benefit from. And then lastly, we will end with the final word from our founder. How does that sound? Good? Okay. All right, great. All right, to inform us on how the Stable Community Foundation is fostering community empowerment, equity, and inclusion, please welcome CEO Kelly Ellsworth Etchison.
Good evening, everyone. So happy to be here tonight and to talk to you a little bit about Stable Communities Foundation. We are a foundation that was seeded by LabQ. So LabQ Credit Union created this foundation to make sure that we are helping our communities that are pretty much have been left behind. They've been disinvested in, And so we decided that we need to make sure we show up and help our communities that most need it. And so that's what we're about. We're about helping people that are having food insecurities, that we're partnering with other community organizations to help with that. We want to make sure that we are helping folks get housing and partnering with organizations to help with that. And how we start to do a financial empowerment, making sure that our families, our adults are prepared to handle a house. I heard a story recently where someone was left a house, their mother passed away, they left them their house, the house was paid for, and the daughter still lost the house. And so while homeownership is a path to building generational wealth, it is not helpful if we're not helping people understand how to handle homeownership, how to take care of the home, how to make sure taxes are paid, how to make sure that they have support that they need to take care of the maintenance of the home. We want people, when they get into a home, to be able to stay in that home. And so partnering with organizations that are really mission-driven of how we stabilize communities. So in our name, Stable Communities, we're about stabilizing the communities. And so we are proud to be able to support the work that the Justice League is doing in our communities around reparations and scholarship and supporting those needs. And I want to just quickly introduce to you some of the Stable Community folks. We have one of our board members, Sabrina Todd, here with us tonight. We have our executive admin, Tanya Griffin, here with us. And she keeps everything coming for me. She is definitely a treasure for me to have. And then our board member, Miles Johnson, we're happy to. And this is just a couple of folks on our board, but our board is very mission driven and understand the needs in our community. They are conveners. They are out there, boots on the ground, and they're bringing back opportunities for the foundation. And so we have a check that we want to present to the Justice League. And so Sabrina will have you folks come up. And Prince, Willie.
You want to do it here? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. This is good.
Wow.
Oh, gee. We'll do a 1, 2, 3. All right. Thanks. Thank you.
So real quickly, because I heard someone say, thanks, LabQ. So real quickly, I just want to tell you why LabQ decided to fund a foundation. We were on our mission for a couple of years to try and get a CDFI certification, so Community Development Financial Institution. And there was some red tape that we couldn't overcome with the bureaucracy that the U.S. Treasury was putting before us. And so we just decided, you know what, we'll just start our own foundation. And so LabQ in this last year been really intentional on how we help those that are in our underserved communities, communities of modest means. So we have lowered our certificate of deposit entry point from $500 to $50, because we understand that no matter what your means are, you should also earn a higher yield on those means. And then that CD, we made it an add-on CD, meaning that you have 50 today, maybe 3 weeks down the road, you get $100, you can add on to that. And so we want to make sure that we're helping. We also lowered permanently our overdraft protection fees and our non-sufficient funds fees from $32 to 99 cents. We gave back, yes, thank you. we gave back to our community 3.9 million last year by lowering those fees. It was the LAFQ's board, which Sabrina plays double duty because she also serves on the LAFQ board. Our board and our CEO, along with the executive team, we knew that it was our mission that we cannot continue to build our book of business off the backs of the people who can least afford to pay those fees. And so we did that. Lastly, I will say that we also wanted to address payday lending in our communities. So for those that may not know the harm that those payday lenders cause our community, when you annualize their fees over that 2-week period, it's 391% interest. So we were doing some advocating work, trying to get those fees capped. It passed in the Senate. We wanted it capped at, the rate capped at 36%, which is still astronomical. It passed in the Senate in 2024, but it failed in the House. And so again, we just decided, let's get about our business and create a product that we can take out to the marketplace. And we made it attractive. We don't pull a credit report on that product because payday lenders don't pull credit. Payday lenders also don't report your pay history, meaning they keep you locked in that debt trap. Because if I charge you 391% and I never report your pay history, guess what happens when you need more money? You got to come back to me. Well, not at LAFQ. So that unsecured rate is at 18%. It is a higher risk loan, obviously, because we're not pulling credit, but it's at 18%, a lot lower than what we were trying to cap payday lenders at. And we report your pay history. So we're hoping to graduate people out of that product into a traditional loan is what the goal is on that. And so those loans are up to $2,000 based on an aggregate deposit total. And then we take 35% of the aggregate deposit that you put in your account over a 91-day period. And that is what determines, it's right in our mobile banking app. Someone can open it. So any of you, if you have a LAFQ account and you have the mobile banking app, if you look in your mobile banking app right now, you will see Express Cash on the left-hand side down towards the bottom. And you can click on that, you can apply for the loan, and in 60 seconds, in 1 minute, it's funded to your account. So we're just being very intentional on how we stabilize communities. Thank you. And I apologize, I do have another engagement that I have to take off for, but wanted to be here for this. Yes.
And I did want to have Prince and I hold this check in our hot little hands.
Yes, there we go.
And have a picture. That would be great.
Okay, we'll get back to you tomorrow.
Oh.
No, like that. Yeah. What?
Right here.
Right there. Good. Yeah, good. Yeah, just look straight on it. So look at a certain thing. Yeah. There you go. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Let's give it up for the Stable Communities Foundation, please. Thank you to the board. Thank you, Ms. Etchison, for the work that you are doing and leading. It means a lot on behalf of the organization. It means a lot to have a local foundation see valued in the work that we're doing and support our work. So thank you. This is the first. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Absolutely.
CMOs. At the core of our driving force at the Justice League is our volunteers. So I want to give a special thank you to our board of directors, our advisory council, members of our administration, public relations, resource development committee, and finance committee, because without you, we couldn't do this. So let's just take a moment for those who are on those committees. Could you just stand so we could appreciate you for just a moment? All right, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you guys for your work and your support. The Justice League began in 2021. We became officially incorporated in 2022, and this is our mission statement. The Justice League of Greater Lansing, Michigan exists to repair the breach caused by the historical damage of slavery and its aftermath. In the spirit of repentance for the sin of racism, we seek to build relationships and facilitate reparations between houses of worship and collaborative partners to increase wealth equity for African Americans in the Greater Lansing area. At the core of our message is education, with the intent to be proactive about repair. In 4 years, we've engaged and educated more than 80 audiences, ranging from houses of worship to seminaries, financial institutions, activists throughout the Midwest and the South that want to duplicate a faith-based model for reparations, to collaborating with professors from Michigan State University and Lansing Community College to share our grassroots practices. Education remains key. And so I just want to take a moment to thank all the different entities and institutions for welcoming us in to share our story. Our story as a community has reached more than 40 media outlets. I know because I've been counting. And that's been in the mid-Michigan area, across the state, and national outlets such as NPR. And so I want to be mindful and say thank you to the press and to professional journalism for keeping our community efforts alive. Many of you have heard before that the first house of worship to pledge to the reparations endowment was Lansing First Presbyterian Church. And that's home to our founder, Willie Bryan, where she spent a couple decades educating and informing the congregation about racial justice and social justice issues, which created the doorway to speak about reparations. Well, 4 years later, there are now 8 houses of worship from varying denominations that support the growth of the reparations endowment. Both predominantly white and predominantly Black houses of worship have been of support. And so this image that you see is a combination of the logos from both predominantly African American and predominantly white houses of worship. I remind you that it was Pastor Foreman from Lansing Reach Out Christian Center on the south side of Lansing, predominantly African American house of worship, that opened his doors for us to lead the first community-driven apology for the legacy of slavery and its aftermath. I also remind you that Pastor King from Kingdom Ministries, predominantly African American church on the south side of Lansing, when we did our second apology at the steps of the Capitol, he welcomed us in to debrief and to talk about the significance of that apology. And then the former pastor of Lansing Church of God in Christ, Bishop Duncan, has welcomed the Justice League to host their annual acknowledgement ceremony for scholarship recipients. So what am I trying to point out? That it takes teamwork to really move this ship. So let's give a round of applause to all of community and houses of worship that are behind this project. Thank you. Our vision statement. The Justice League of Greater Lansing, Michigan has cemented our commitment to healing and becoming the beloved community by making the connection between faith and racial justice in the form of reparations. In the Greater Lansing area, reparations will be committed mainly from predominantly white houses of worship as part of their efforts to repair the breach caused by centuries of slavery, inequality of wealth accumulation, and the failure to live into God's plan of equality for all of humanity. And our pillars. We will create an endowment fund through contributions from faith-based and individual donors, as well as corporate and community-based organizations. We will build an advisory council made up of African Americans from different sectors in the community to manage the fund. And then lastly, we will ensure the fund supports education scholarships, homeownership, and entrepreneurship growth. And that's exactly what we've done. We launch our third round of educational scholarships at the end of this month on February 28th. At the end of this year, we will have allocated $75,000 in scholarships since our inception to the descendants of enslaved African Americans living within the Tri-County region. The portal will open on February 28th, and we are encouraging individuals that are planning to attend an accredited college, university, vocational, or trade school to apply. Our second pillar, homeownership. We understand that homeownership is key to intergenerational wealth, to building intergenerational wealth. And so in 2024, we partnered with ECAC, which stands for Eastside Community Action Center. And we supported a house build for a brand new home for an African-American senior. And it was her first home. By the end of 2026, we will have completed our second house build. Again, the work continues. The concept of the Justice League and a model for faith-based reparations was initiated by the founder, Willie Bryan, in 2021. Her blueprint tugged at all of our conscience. We had the spirit, but we knew we would need funding to move this endeavor. I recall being on a Zoom call with Willie and about 7 other early Justice League supporters, and I said, hey guys, if we want this to work, we're gonna have to chip in. And we did. By the end of that Zoom call, we had raised roughly $1,100 or so. Fast forward 4 years later, and due to our faith, due to our perseverance, due to the teamwork of this community, we've raised more than $700,000 to support reparations. So again, the work continues. And now for the moment we've been waiting for. In one form or another, tonight's panelists have been a part of and witnessed that journey. So I'd like to go ahead and welcome tonight's panelists. And as I call your name, I'll have you come up and take your seat at the table. And so we will start with Mr. Tom Arthur. And Tom's back there navigating the camera. So we will start with Reverend Dr. Kit Carlson. The Reverend Dr. Kit, sure, you deserve one. How you doing?
Good.
The Reverend Dr. Kit Carlson was rector of All Saints Episcopal Church from 2007 to 2024. During her tenure there, the church engaged in a variety of anti-racism trainings and programs, culminating in a commitment to intentional reparations, including giving half the proceeds of the sale of the church's parsonage to the Justice League of Greater Lansing. Pastor Carlson has a long-standing commitment to anti-racism work, beginning in the multicultural churches she attended and served in Maryland, and rooted in one incredible course in womanist theology that she took at Howard University in the year 2000, taught by the Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas. Let's give a warm welcome to Reverend Carlson. Next, we'll welcome Marcus Cheatham. Marcus Cheatham and his partner Deborah Bennett have lived in the Greater Lansing area since 1984, raising a son in the community. Marcus taught at MSU and worked at the Ingham County Health Department until his retirement in 2022. He has been a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church since coming here, serving in a wide variety of roles. Marcus says he really likes the Midwest because so many people have old-fashioned values, especially if they are flaming leftists. People take care of each other here, put the community first, and are always trying to make things better. Give a warm welcome to Marcus Yu. And Mr. Dave Holloway, Chair of Reparations Task Force and member of University United Methodist Church, the most recent house of worship to step to the plate to support the efforts of the Justice League. give Dave Holloway a warm welcome, please. And then last, we have Mr. Tom Arthur. Tom is a faith-inspired entrepreneur with a track record of launching and coaching ventures that blend business, community, and creativity. As the lead pastor of Sycamore Creek Church, he's helped launch multiple campuses and most recently led the redevelopment of a historic building into a thriving community hub, a performing arts incubator, and commercial kitchen supporting local startups and nonprofit ventures. Please welcome Tom Arthur. All right, excellent. So thank you all for being panelists this evening. And let's just do a mic check. Can we turn on your mics, please?
This one's on. Yep, you should be good.
Can I get a selfie of the two of us?
Test, test.
I'll get Prince in the
Okay,
back.
excellent. Thank you, Becca.
There we go.
All right, so to put a little context to tonight's discussion, there will be 5 questions that will be asked to each panelist, and each panelist will have roughly 2 to 3 minutes to respond. Now, this structure is simply to guide our time. We want this to be as organic as possible, so what that means is that, you know, one question you're responding to may interlay with another question, or something that one panelist says might inspire you to speak up. Please do so. So I'll be guiding the time, but the floor will be your guys' tonight, okay? All right, so we will get started with the first question. And Sycamore Creek will take the first question. And how this will work, Tom, once you respond to the question, anyone else feel free to go afterward, okay? So the first question is, what led your church to support reparations?
So I think I want to go back actually to a personal experience that I had in a sense of call to racial and economic justice when I was in college. And that was my first call before I was called to get married, before I was called to be a pastor, before I was called to have kids. In some sense, it's felt like each one of those other calls has been like, how am I going to live out racial and economic justice personally in terms of being married, in terms of being a pastor, in terms of being a dad. When I was first appointed to Sycamore Creek, I was coming right out of seminary. I'm a second pastor following a founding pastor. Sycamore Creek was a church plant. It's called a mother-daughter plant out of Holt United Methodist Church. It's planted by Barb Flory, a rebel grandma who had a vision for a church that when she was an atheist, she would have wanted to go to. And being appointed as the second pastor, I guess I should add, Dave and I are, we're siblings in denomination. We're a United Methodist Church as well, even though we don't have it in our name, but we're newer. University's been around a lot longer than we have. But when you follow a founding pastor, it really sucks for a couple of years. You get chewed up pretty bad. And I survived through that. And in the process, eventually, we didn't have a building at first. We were setting up and tearing down in a school. And I led us to ultimately purchase a building in South Lansing at Mount Hope in Pennsylvania. And then over time, as what we were doing was seen to be thriving, our denominational people came to us at different times and said, well, there's this church that's struggling. Would you be interested in adopting them? And the first one of that was Potterville United Methodist Church in Potterville, which is just southwest of Lansing. And so that we said, yeah, let's give it a try. And in the process, we were able to revitalize that church. That church was very courageous in that they made the decision to be adopted by a church before they were on their deathbed, which is how this usually goes. Like the churches have exhausted all their people, all their resources, and then like, okay, I guess we'll finally do something different. And in this case, that church still had 60 or 70 people. It had a lot of energy left in it, but they were ready to do something different. And then fast forward several years, and Asbury United Methodist Church had struggled for many years, and they came, coming out of COVID, they were down to like 10 or 15 people in worship each week. And our district superintendent came to us from them and said, would you be interested in exploring adopting them? And we said we would, but we were going to do something very different with that particular adoption. We were going to shut it down for a year and remodel it as a performing arts center for community theater groups, as well as use the commercially licensed kitchen as an incubator kitchen for food startup businesses. The legacy, though, of Asbury United Methodist Church, which this is true of a lot of churches, they have a legacy of past thriving, past times or seasons when they were larger, bigger, had more resources, and at some point in that history, a lot of those churches then built endowments. And Asbury United Methodist Church was like that. They had an endowment, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is like an intergenerational transfer of wealth. And now I've forgotten where am I supposed to, what led you? So right around that time, we hadn't adopted Asbury completely yet, but I had met Prince. This was just as you were beginning this whole Justice League thing. It was brand new. You didn't have any churches that were committed yet. I was still at our South Lansing campus. You lived in that neighborhood. And I was preaching a sermon on reparations like in 3 weeks. And I was like, Prince, you got to come and be my co-host. We have a co-host. Our worship services are sort of a mashup of like a podcast mixed with a talk show, mixed with a TED Talk. And so I had you come and talk about what you were doing while this whole Asbury thing was going on. And I brought up to the previous leadership at Asbury, if we're going to receive this endowment, Sycamore Creek didn't have an endowment. We're a new church. We're like the teenagers, like growing up at this point. We don't have that legacy. And but I mentioned it to the Asbury folks who were on leadership at that time, and they said that's exactly the kind of thing that the people who founded that endowment would want it to be used for. So we in the process then of going forward with the adoption, that includes like the leadership of that church is shut down. Sycamore Creek's leadership becomes the leadership of that church. I left the campus that I was at to become the pastor at this campus. We brought a new person onto the campus that I was at, and we just made the process. Sycamore Creek, because it's a newer church, it doesn't quite have as much policy and procedure, and newer churches tend to put a lot of authority in the office of the pastor. So I was able to just say, basically, hey, we're doing this. And my leadership team was on board, and we made it happen. So it took a little bit to get the endowment into our name and figure out exactly how much we were going to give, but we ended up making a commitment. I think it was over 3 years for, it was 1% of the endowment's total value January 1st each year. And I anticipate that we're going to continue that.
Thank you, Tom. Who would like to go next?
I'll go next. Our story is sort of the opposite because the Episcopal Church is a very hierarchical church with many rules of the way you must do things. But our church got interested in this because we had been doing a lot of work. When I first got to All Saints in 2007, I met one of our members, and maybe some of you knew her, Valerie Smith. She's since moved to Virginia. But she was trained to do equity training, and after she retired from being an educator, and worked with the Ingham County Health Department, and she started doing this equity anti-racism training for our church, and did various iterations of this, including 2 on Zoom during COVID. And at the same time, we had book groups. It's a very common thing in majority white churches to read books, right? We read books. I was fortunate to serve in a congregation that once they finished reading the books, they wanted to do something about it. So we had over our altar this giant white Jesus on a cross who looked like a Viking looking down on you. And I went to All Saints when I was at MSU, and I just figured he was there when I was in college. He would be there when I died. But our diocesan convention was held, and Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas, who I studied with when I took that class at Howard, was the speaker. And she said to this room full of mostly white Episcopalians, go back to your churches and look around and see what the images in your churches say. You say you're welcoming, but does the imagery in your church say that you're welcoming? And my delegates turned to me and they're like, we got to get rid of Jesus. So we did get rid of giant Jesus, and we hung him in a stairwell and put a big plaque on him, and then put out a commission to local artists for a different image. And Doug DeLinde created a beautiful, non-gendered, multiracial risen Christ made out of raku ceramic that hangs over the altar there now. But once that got up, they said, well, what are we going to do now? I said, well, I've been thinking about, we should talk about reparations. And two of my leadership we were like, oh, that is it. That is it. So even though it was in the middle of COVID, we started having conversations about what are reparations? Why would we even be interested in doing it? We had 3 Zoom to YouTube classes where we had Dr. Pero Dagbovie from MSU as a panelist. We had the Arizona Episcopal Church's minister to the indigenous communities talk about what white people did when they came to this country with the indigenous population, and started to foster the conversation in the church about, well, what is it? Why would we think about it? What does it mean to us? East Lansing also was a redlined community. It was a whites-only sundown town until 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed. And because of that, anyone who owns property in East Lansing, a majority white community, has far more house wealth than anybody in Lansing. And so this was a church full of people sitting on wealth that they inherited, right? They didn't make it themselves. They inherited it from their parents. They bought a house when they were 21 and it increased in value, and all the magical ways that we get wealth in this country through home ownership. We were thinking of selling the rectory because it was not really a fit place for clergy to live in. It was not handicapped accessible. There wasn't anything we could do to make it accessible. It just wasn't useful. And we had a local developer really eager to pay cash for it. So at the same time we're talking about selling this parsonage, we were also having this reparations conversation. So the vestry, which is the governing board of the church, formed a task force that researched all of this. Like, should we do reparations? What is our fault? Turned out that the first African-American professor at MSU, David Dixon, had been a member of All Saints and wanted to buy a home in Lansing in the 50s when they were going to build the church building, and church members told him not to try that, and they weren't going to support him because it might take away from donations people would make to build the new church building. So there were layers and layers. There's the whole layer of systemic racism, but they were particular layers of sin that pertained to us. And the congregation was pretty good about seeing what that was. And then when we realized that, we took the redlining of Lansing map, and I found some houses in the very red area that were comparable age to the rectory, same number of bedrooms, same number of bathrooms. They sold for $75,000, $80,000. Our rectory sold for $240,000. So nothing said wealth disparity like that, right? So the task force brought this report to the vestry. The vestry adopted it in 2023, and the rectory sold shortly after that. And in August of 2023, the vestry voted to give half the proceeds of the rectory to the Justice League, which we had been involved with from the beginning. We had several All Saints members on the Justice League board from the founding of the organization. So I don't know, it was one of the more beautiful moments of my ministry. I just am so excited that this work is going on, and everything we just heard tonight, Prince, is just Willie, oh my God. Yeah, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Marcus.
So I'm from the Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm too loud? This is better. Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lansing, and it's one of the traditional peace churches, and we've actually collaborated with the churches that are up here that are also traditional peace churches. So we would naturally, you would think, be inclined to support reparations. That might be what led us to support reparations. My friend John Sanford, who's in the audience, he's here with his wife Betty Sanford, who happens to be on the advisory council of the Justice League, had been working on trying to get the UU Church to support reparations. And Prince and Willie had even visited, and yet nothing was happening. So what could get us going? And what actually happened was that John took me out to lunch with Prince, and he did this. Marcus, I need you to help me get the Unitarian Universalist Church to support the Justice League. And when you get a personal ask like that from somebody, you have to say yes, right? And so that's what got us started. And I'm telling that story because I think there is a question inside the question. We need more churches to support the Justice League. And I think that personal ask is part of what we have to do. Those churches that might have reservations or might not be inclined to consider supporting the Justice League, can we find people on the inside who might be able to hear that call?
Thank you, Marcus. The microphone sounds a little bit stuffy, so Dave, try and speak, and if it is, then we'll use the other microphone.
Okay, how's this working?
How's that sound?
At about that distance, okay?
I think we need the
Okay.
Thank you.
I can only give you my perspective on how this unfolded at University United Methodist Church, but I think very early in
Is your mic on, Dave?
Point it towards your mouth, it's directional.
very early in my 3-year term as chairman of our leadership board, which just ended, began to percolate around the church that there was interest in this project, and you started hearing it here and there. And we have within our church a group, Church and Society. It's not exactly a committee. Well, I guess there's a committee that organizes, but it's broader than that, and they lead us in studies and outreach and things like that within community activism and anti-racism work and things of that sort. And certainly coming out of there, I think Melanie also was getting the word, our pastor, and we encourage her to be out and about in the community and support that, and working with others in faith community. And hearing about this and thinking it was worthwhile. And shortly after that, I guess, they invited Prince and Willie to come give a presentation to one of our lunch and learn after church programs, and I think they made the ask for $100,000 from our church. And I got to tell you, I'll go in later about some of the obstacles we've worked through and how we've chosen to go about this. But I have to say that there has always been support, even though strong support in our church for this, even though it took 3 years to get it done. And there was never any vocal opposition. I mean, I'm sure various people have their own priorities of what they want to see done, but our church was behind this. I mean, I think we've done enough background work, and it's in our character that we want to be a part of this.
There we go. Excellent, excellent. So just to zoom out for a moment, as executive director of the organization, I'm privy to a lot of the small steps that it's taken to build our outreach and build these relationships over the past 4 years. And so part of the reason that
That's one that works.
part of the reason of having tonight's panel discussion is that I want the work that we're doing to be public discourse, right? That's imperative. And for these panelists to be able to share their stories in all the unique ways. It goes to show you that there is no cookie cutter approach to supporting reparations, and that it's very unique to that house of worship. And so we will continue with the second question, which will be led by Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lansing. And that question is, how did the church reach the unanimous decision to support reparations, and describe the internal process of who was involved?
Yeah, so I think churches have leadership, so it's very important to have buy-in from your pastor, minister, priest, whoever. And I think there are two flavors of that. Sometimes, Kit, it's led, the move towards reparation is led by church leadership, and sometimes it bubbles up from below. In our case, our minister said, well, if you guys want to do this, go ahead and make it happen. It wasn't led by him. It bubbled up from below. I already told you about how John had been agitating for the church to support the Justice League. And then you need to spread the word to everyone else. So we did a whole series of small group meetings. Sometimes 4 people came, and sometimes it was 40, but you have to be persistent. And eventually the word starts to get out. We had Prince and Willie come in to talk about the racial wealth gap and what can be done about it. People really like that. That got them very much fired up. And then lastly, we decided to ask the congregation to vote to support the Justice League. And that was not strictly speaking necessary. We don't have a ton of money, so we weren't putting any of our operational budget into this, so this didn't need minister or board. It didn't need congregational approval. The minister or the board could just say, yeah, you can do this. But we wanted people to experience an act of atonement themselves to vote to participate in reparations. So we went ahead and did that. And the vote was, I don't remember if it was completely unanimous or if there was 1 or 2 dissenters. But I'll tell you an organizing trick that I learned in this process. A lot of times when we would have meetings, it would seem to be contentious. You would have people say, well, I don't know. Why reparations for African Americans? What about Native Americans? What about this? What about that? We're supporting the Refugee Development Center. Can we afford to do this other thing? It would seem very contentious. But then I learned at the end of the meeting, just before it breaks up, you say, well, I want to get a sense of the room. So first of all, how many people would not vote to support the Justice League right now? And 1 or 2 hands would go up. How many people would vote to support the Justice League? And 50 hands would go up. And so it would be crystal clear where people really wanted to go. So that kind of describes, I think, nuts and bolts of our process.
Ultimately, the green light, after this had been discussed widely within our church, ultimately the green light came from our leadership board. That's how our process works, with a unanimous vote after considerable discussion among the congregation, a unanimous vote to support fairly recently, actually, in the last few months. But I think we just kept it out in front of people. And you have to meet a church where they are right now too. Everybody has their current circumstances. When we began to look at this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I was actually responsible for dragging feet a little bit, because we were in the process of paying off a mortgage we had to take to buy a piece of property we didn't want to buy, but we had to buy because we needed to control it, and we had to pay that off. And we had momentum and said, okay, let's wait until the last pledges are in before we start something else, because people can only handle so many asks at a time. So I'm as responsible for anything, but you can only, everybody has their circumstances of where they are in the moment. And anyway, I'll get into a couple of the other obstacles that are some of the obstacles later with the next question.
I probably oversold the speed with which this was decided. in the sense of the groundwork that had been laid long before the situation or opportunity ever came up. We as a church had participated for many years in anti-racism work with anti-racism coaches, doing caucusing, doing, learning a lot of the things that you described, both locally and nationally. And so the groundwork was laid. I think in some ways the reason the speed was because it really wasn't, we're a multi-site church. This was an endowment coming from a church that was dying. There really are only like 3 or 4 decision makers left in that church. So there's not a lot of work that you have to do to get those folks on board. In some sense, if they weren't on board, I think we probably would have done it anyway, because there's a reason that church was struggling. But our vision team, or our leadership structure, is we have a vision team, which is similar to maybe a leadership board, or what, I can't remember, what's the
Vestry.
Vestry. It consists of 7, 8 people, and we make decisions based on consensus. So it is like one person can say, no, I'm not there yet. Similar to your, like, how many people are on board. We do a slightly different, like we do a temperature grade, like on a scale of 1 to 10. 10, you're like all in on this decision, 1, no way. So that we get a feel, because, where were those 2 that were no on a 10-point scale? Are they 4s or are they 1s? Like those are different, like kind of 4 is like, I'm kind of hesitant. I need some more information. 1 is like, I've dug in, I'm fighting against this. So I think our vision team, again, almost all of them had been involved at some level with the anti-racism training that we had done. So when I presented the idea, it was to fertile soil. And there was really little to no decision that needed to be made other than to honor those 3 or 4 people who were left in decision-making. They were all on board anyway. They didn't need any convincing. And then what you said is really intriguing to me, and I actually think there may have been, so there's no church, like, so there's like, when you're starting a new church, there's no church to build that, what you were talking about. But I love that idea of that we have to vote. We don't have to vote, but we do vote to make this commitment. And that's a really compelling vision to me, and it makes me wonder about it. It happened so fast that I think, like, all of your education systems, Prince, like, we outpaced those. You're usually going and like explaining reparations, explaining the history, explaining why, and you came back to us, I don't know, like a year or 2 later and said, hey, we never got to do our presentation to you all about why this is important. Could we do that? We were like, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then we realized, like, there is like this, you do need to continue to vision it. But one of, I think, the things that's been unique about making a commitment to last over years, I love like the selling of the house and the giving of all that and the big sort of show of that, or the big commitment. I don't mean that in any derogatory way of it as a show. It's a big moment for a church to do that. Like, you just all stood up here and got presented a $50,000 check from LAFQ's foundation. That's a huge moment. You got to run with that. And because ours was a commitment like that we were making over years, every year we have you come to our campuses and we present a check and we celebrate it again. And as you were up here talking about the church that was that has that presentation of the scholarships, I was like, why in the world do we not have those scholarship recipients come and like celebrate with them at Sycamore Creek? It's like that ongoing. It's like you've already made the decision, so now you have to continue to cultivate the soil. The soil is fertile, but then you continue to cultivate the soil. You continue to put it, you continue to celebrate it, you continue to, so we have an internal leadership conference and every year, and we had you all do a workshop last year on it. We had I might be getting into other questions. I was so busy doing the video that I forgot to even look at what the questions were. But but we had you come to our youth gathering over MLK weekend and do it with our youth. And so it's just a constant, like, keeping it before the church. But then our vision team is really the ones that make the final decision.
So I talked a little bit about the background work, and like Tom, we were plowing a lot of ground. We had the Justice League come and present. We had the Reparations Task Force do small group meetings throughout the congregation. We have our congregation annual meeting in January, and the vestry didn't vote till May. So this was a big discussion of the whole church at the annual meeting, which surfaced some resistance from a few people, which, we kind of expected there would be resistance. But when it came time in May for the vestry, which is the board that has the authority to vote, the plan, and we are doing more than just the big check. I brought the plan.
Oh, okay.
There's a
Good.
whole plan.
There's a whole plan.
There's a whole plan. They voted a whole plan of reparations that included participating in the public apology, which we did at the Capitol, included the gift of half of the rectory proceeds. That was another whole process, because in the Episcopal Church, the property is held in trust by the local church for the diocese, which is the bigger organization. So we had to have a parish meeting, and the congregation voted to sell it, and we had to get permission from the diocese to sell it. But we were going to sell it regardless. So this was just a decision about what to do with the money. And so there was an entire reparation plan that includes further engagement with Justice League. I think Janet Chegwooden's on the advisory board. There's a commitment to give 1% of the available income each year from the endowment. There are two endowments, 1% of the available income toward the Justice League endowment, but also to contribute annually from our operations fund to the operations of Justice League, because the administration is expensive too. The Reparations Task Force also engaged with the Nokomis Cultural Center and is still working with them to explore what the best way is we can support the tribal people around us. And they're talking about doing a capital campaign and rebuilding the Nokomis building, and there's a commitment to work with them on that when they get to that point. So it was a bigger plan. But basically, once the vestry decided and voted, that was the approval.
All right, thank you. Just by a show of hands, how many people are learning something tonight? All right, that's why we're here. All right, so we're very good. Absolutely, this is for all of us to learn each other's story. So we're going to move forward with the next question number 3, which will be led by All Saints. And that question is, what obstacles did the church face in supporting reparations, and how did it navigate those obstacles?
Well, the first thing I have to say is All Saints is a church full of very nice people who like to get along. So they do not like to have too much conflict, but they are, opinionated people too. So there were a few in the congregation who were confused even after hearing all the explanations about, none of us, what do they always say? None of us owned slaves. Why do I have to do this? So they never quite got the understanding of systemic racism that we kept trying to explain. A couple of our African-American members didn't think it was necessary, which I thought was, I don't know, it was their opinion, right? And when the decision was made, there were 2 families who left outright. There were 2 other families who left but couldn't stand being apart, and they just came back. So really it was accomplished with a very small, considering the scope of what we were doing, a very, very small amount of resistance. And we worked through it.
I think I'm going to answer this question from a 10,000 foot level, not this specific reparations, because we really, again, for our experience is that this commitment is a growth strategy, not a like we're attracting people because of these commitments, not, and the people of color at our campus, at our campuses, see it as a sign of that we're really serious about it. And so there has not been a lot of opposition. I think there's been basically no opposition when it comes to the Justice League. I think that we're being a multi-site. We are so if you think about Eastwood, that's the campus that I'm at. It's right across from Eastwood Town Center. So that's some weird like Venn diagram mixture of like city, suburb, university space. South Lansing at Mount Hope and Penn, that is smack dab in the middle of the city. And then Potterville is small town rural America. And so within Sycamore Creek exists the demographic spread of the United States. City, suburb, university, small town, rural area. And one of the things that you have to remember is that the way to do justice work isn't going to look the same in every context. And what might work at my campus might be a challenge at another campus, and vice versa. And it's at times it's easy for us as a church, or we're tempted to say, well, if our rural campus would just get in gear and be on board, then we'd be able to do amazing things. And I have to remind myself that our rural campus is the most diverse campus politically of all of our campuses. And so my campus is kind of like the choir preaching at itself. Like we're not really engaged in persuasion and influence. And there's benefits and strengths to that, where you can run real fast, real far, but then there's also, you get in your own little echo chamber and you're missing something. And so our campus pastor at our rural campus is tasked with the challenge of nice people who in that space, in mainline churches, it's a don't ask, don't tell about all kinds of things, not just gender and sexuality, but any kind of justice or politics or whatever. So that presents a unique, I'd say, opportunity for how to create a culture where you can have those conversations. And it keeps our other campuses honest, that we can't forget that there are other people in the United States who disagree with us. And that how do we love? How do we persuade? How do we create an environment where God's grace is at work and transformation, both in a mutual giving and receiving? That it's not, again, one of the traits of white supremacy is that I've got it all together and you need to get on board. And white people can treat each other that way as well, like in this, or attempted to, in terms of like, that's the rural campus. We got to figure it out. You need to get on board. And there's something, when you come to a place of disagreement, I always come with like, you have something that I need. I don't know what it is yet, but I need to remain curious enough until God's Spirit reveals to me what you have that I don't have yet and I need.
Yeah, I won't bore you or be as quick as I can in without getting into all the United Methodist stuff that you're probably not that interested in. But so when we first began to investigate this and feeling some some urgency to do something in this area, said, well, can't we just make a donation from the endowment? We're not that old a church. We don't have a huge endowment like some old legacy churches. We have a nice endowment. Some people have done a nice job in growing it. But at any rate, in investigating our articles, no, we can't. They are pretty restrictive as far as making a capital donation of that magnitude. And we can understand each other. Justice League is building an endowment to be operated in perpetuity. And has governance to ensure that our stuff was set up with the same, the same purpose. But that doesn't preclude the endowment is probably going to be part of our solution, and the solution we arrived at it is. We just couldn't do it simply and easily upfront with that. Likewise, we were, along with acquiring some property, we were selling some property. And we said, well, can't we use some of the money from the property? Well, United Methodist discipline, our Constitution, basically, actually, no, we can't. If you're selling property, then it has to be used to maintain, acquire, improve, ask for a special dispensation from the district superintendent. And I think she probably, had we asked, she probably would have said, you're a large and prosperous congregation. You can take care of this. Just go take care of it. I don't think she would have really, and I didn't want to ask, and we didn't ask. And and so the solution we finally arrived at, we have a matching grant, probably for 3 years. In the first year now, a matching grant, $12,000 a year from the endowment. Need $2 of donation from our members of our congregation to activate $1, 2-for-1 grant, so we can raise $36,000 a year through that and achieve, hopefully before then, but within 3 years, achieve our $100,000 pledge. And if we need, I'm confident we're going to get this done. I mean, we haven't even rolled this out in full to the congregation. That'll happen in a week or two. We already have about half of what we will need for the match in lead donors that have just, come forward, as we wanted to have things on the books, have the well primed, if you will, before the campaign started. So I'm confident one way or another we'll make this. And if we need to change course a little bit somewhere, we'll change course. But we're going to get this done. And I tell people, well, if you are tired of hearing me bother you, just give money and get this over with, and then I won't bother you anymore. So, so that's the process we went through, and that's where we are today.
Dave, in the spirit of this not just being like boom, 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 you're reminding me of some of the United Methodist red tape that I forgot about. I'm sort of a 10,000-foot vision person, and then people take care of the red tape. Like you, thank you for taking care of the red tape so that your pastor can just cast vision. But one of the fun pieces, or I guess a fun piece of when a church closes, is like the endowment goes into limbo about what exactly it's for and all that kind of stuff. And so the original like bylaws of the endowment were that from Asbury were that it was for new things. And we just declared that the whole adoption was a new thing and everything, and it just freed the whole thing up to like basically unlock the endowment. So you have these dying churches that have got this big chunk of cash while they're dying, and they're not using it. And that's an interesting part of vision, is that this church, we were able to remodel the building, do all of these things with the money that was already there. Like there wasn't, the only thing that was different was vision. They already had all the resources. They just didn't have the vision. They missed the vision and the culture. Those are the two significant parts, vision and culture. So that was one piece of it. That was like a way of around that red tape. Thankfully, y'all aren't closing, so you don't have to figure that out. But if anybody out there is in that sort of situation, and we're videotaping this tonight, so maybe that'll come up. There are unique loopholes when institutions die with a bunch of money, or close, or get merged. It technically wasn't a closure; it was an adoption. So we absorbed them. They didn't vote to close; they voted to adopt. But then, as you're talking about, I forgot something I keep forgetting about because it's brand new. Is we also sold a house that we made a commitment to because we bought a new house. We had a house in Holt, which is where I lived for many years until I moved to Groesbeck to start this new thing. And Holt's not our mission field. So we ended up buying a house in South Lansing, which is our mission field for the new pastor at that campus. So we ended up with 4 houses, and our district superintendent and board of location, blah, blah, whatever, yada, yada, I don't remember their total name, said, well, your fourth house isn't a parsonage. The money doesn't have to be spent in that way, you can just do whatever you want with it. So that was open for us to just make some of these commitments like you all talked about when you sell property.
Excellent.
Marcus,
Thank you.
Marcus
Tom.
didn't get to go.
Yes, I know, and Marcus is going to get to go. I just want to be mindful about the times. We have roughly 13 minutes or so left, and we still have 2 questions to go. So Marcus, I'm going to.
So we faced a lot of obstacles, but I want to focus in particular on one, which is the feeling that white houses of worship, some people in white houses of worship have when they're asked to give reparations, which is my family didn't own slaves. The problem is people don't know their own family history, right? They just don't know it. So they say silly stuff like, no one in my family owned slaves. When people think of reparations, they think of a fine or a punishment. So if you're familiar with the group Sounds of Blackness, they have this great song, Time for Reparations. It's a very good song, and they're a very good group, but it has a problematic refrain in the song. Pay up, pay up, pay up. And if you're a white moderate, you hear that and go, oh, that's scary. I don't want to do that. And Unitarian Universalists love to accuse people of being racist. And the thing is, those things don't make people less racist. It's just, and it's right, and it's true, but it doesn't make people less racist. So briefly, I just want to mention the work of Professor Roy Brooks from the University of California at San Diego. He has a great book. You should read it. It's called Atonement and Reparations. And he leads off by saying the whole point of reparations is not actually to close the racial wealth gap. It's really to reduce racism, make people less racist. Because if we live in a just society, the racial wealth gap will take care of itself. Then he asked the question, so what's the money about? Why give money for reparations? And he says the point of it is spiritual healing, atonement, right? The only way to reduce racism is for white people to say to themselves, I really want to fix this problem. I now that I understand what's happened, I feel moved to care and to take action. And he also says, and African Americans, when they see that, need to acknowledge that. Yes, things are getting better. So he says this. The point of reparations is a significant sacrifice made to heal a real harm. The sacrifice is the revelation of the sincerity of the apology. And the victim sees the sacrifice and acknowledges that the apology is genuine and concedes that the wound has been healed. That's the point of reparations, and that's the point of the money, to put something real on the table and say, this is how much I really mean it. And so I think when we shared this with our congregation, some of the people who were like this kind of went, yeah, I would like to do that thing. I don't want to be punished, but if I can heal someone, I'll give a lot of money to heal someone. And so that was part of our strategy too, that I think really made a difference.
Thank you, Marcus. So many different perspectives and approaches to repairing the breach. We have 2 questions left. We have about 10 minutes left, 5 minutes of the panel discussion.
Speed answers.
That's right. So we're so this next question here will take 1 minute to respond. All right, and we will lead with you, Mr. Holloway. So the question is, how was the form of payment determined by the church?
I think I pretty well covered that, as far as how we got there. We wanted to meet the ask. I don't think it was unreasonable for a church of our size to be asked to contribute on that magnitude. And we arrived from a practical, practical arrangement of how we could get this done, is how we came down to it. And I'd just like to say, because I may not get another chance here, we're running out of time, but we're really just starting into this process now of the fundraising element of this. I mean, we have people on board, and I just want to say, fortunately, I don't control the pulpit. Melanie, Reverend Carey does, but I know she's going to use this as an opportunity for us to really delve into this topic as far as its meaning as we go forward, and having had to approach this in the way we did, I think will turn out to be a good thing. That it's going to be in front of us for a few years as we get this done, and I think it will be for our betterment as a congregation.
So I'll keep it real short. I'll just say that our goal was to raise $15,000 and we raised $70,000. So.
I don't remember how we came upon the percentage that we gave, but we decided to do 1% of the total value of the endowment on January 1st for 3 years. So, yeah.
The reparations task force made the determination, and 3 of the people on the task force were also very active with Justice League as it was forming and coming into being. So I think that also helped push them to the decision that they presented to the vestry.
Excellent. Great job on timing. All right, and our last question, folks. Due to your active involvement, reparations is now part of the legacy of your church and this community. And what does that mean to you in rapid response?
It means that the world is a little bit more whole every time we do something like this, even if it's just like this little gathering in the library on a cold winter night. The world gets made into a little bit more whole and loving place every time we do these actions.
I'm gonna let you all answer first, just because I'm thinking about this. This is the first time I've seen this question.
Yeah, no, I think about this a lot, and I'll tell you what. I think some church people, spiritual people, religious people are feeling dissatisfied with the way we are in community with each other. Like, we're still talking about traditionally white houses of worship and traditionally African American houses of worship. We're not together yet. And I talk to, whenever I have a chance to talk to, priests, ministers, rabbis, whoever, I keep saying, like, we got to do something with the structure of religious life in the United States so we can be more together. And this is what the Justice League has given us, a chance to be in community with each other across differences and do really healing work as one people. That's a huge change. It's just one little thing. We have so much farther to go. But I'm so glad the Justice League is here because it's really changed what it means to be a member of a church in this community.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know yet, but it was a great opportunity to find myself kind of shepherding this thing through leadership board at the end of my term, and then assuming ownership of it. And wow, it's great. I don't know. It's a real eye-opening. It's of spiritual value to me, should I say. I don't know.
I'm going to answer 2 things, 2 pieces of it. One is, I'll tell you this metaphor from Latasha Morrison's book, Be the Bridge, where she says that reparations is like a football game where the first half, the refs are clearly crooked and calling it for one team. And you go into halftime and the score is 56-0. And the refs have a come to Jesus moment, and they come out and they say, we confess we've been calling it crooked the whole time. We're going to call it right now. And that sounds all good and great, but then the team that's got 0 points says, what about the score? And for me, it's about the equity of the score. Of course, it's not a competition. I think the beloved community flourishing is not a competition, but that's the repair work. The score means flourishing. And so it's, for me, it means being part of figuring out what to do about that score, speaking metaphorically. But I think it also, a mentor of mine, who I have a complicated relationship with, has said that the litmus test of white commitment to anti-racism work is whether you're willing to follow Black leadership. And for me personally, the Justice League gives me an opportunity to follow Black leaders. I didn't come up with this idea. It felt like it fell in my lap. And so some of that's been the relationship with you, Prince and Willie, and being able to sit under your leadership and allow you to lead me as I lead my predominantly white church. And I miss white leaders, and white people lose something when they don't sit under Black leadership. And so it means something to me and to the kingdom of God to sit under Black leadership.
Thank you so much. Let's give a warm round of applause to our panelists. Thank you for sharing your perspectives tonight. It was an educational piece. And again, I get to see a lot of the great work happening behind the scenes, and I wanted to share it with you. And so that's why we had this discussion tonight. And so we will end the evening with a word from our founder. So please welcome Willie Bryan.
Thank you, Prince, and thank you for being here tonight. And I just I would like to tell you what this means to me, what this night means to me. 5 years ago, I had the idea that I thought would revolutionize reparative justice in this greater Lansing area. And so what I did about it was I went to white houses of worship, and I went to Black houses of worship, African-American houses of worship. And I said to the groups is that what we could do, how could we become more like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s termed the beloved community. And that certainly meant that what that means is that all of the participants in the community, certainly all over the country, but certainly in the community, can collectively share in the resources that the entire community produces. So that with that dream, I went to these houses of worship and told them the idea that I thought could literally change things. And to my great happiness and amazement, folks said yes. And what I realized was that the churches and houses of worship, they weren't all just churches, had been looking for a way to make this happen. And it was just wonderful then to see this come to fruition, because just as the panelists, you've heard this, just as the group was saying, reparations has always been such a hard place to go, because even if folks thought, we did deserve to equalize and did deserve to help and repair the breach that's been caused by slavery and its aftermath, it's such a fraught topic, and we certainly want to normalize that term, because that's exactly right. Folks go, well, I mean, what do you expect me to do? I mean, that's been 400 years of this kind of abuse. How can we repair that overnight? How can we do this? And so bringing this idea of how we could do it was wonderful for folks to realize that we can do this. We literally can do it. We can find, you've heard all the ways of coming to this final decision. So the volunteers, folk who have stepped up, and you know, many of you are in this room who have stepped up and said, yes, we not only have we made an organization, but we have really made community. We have made this be an answer to not only my dreams and my prayers, but to the community, because I've heard it here tonight of folks saying, how do you do it? And most of the time, folks think of it as opening your wallet and taking out a little bit, and it's like, that's not going to help anything, or I don't have enough, or or my folks weren't involved with enslavement of African Americans in this country. So this has been very powerful, very wonderful experience for me and for everyone who has come on board and said, let's do this. And so I wanted you to know, I wanted to be put out in the ether to say that this has been a wonderful experience for me, and the wonderful experience of communing with folk who want to do this, who want to make it right, who want to see and walk into the light of seeing a production like this happening. So I wanted you to know that and say thank you for all the volunteers who come forth and made this a reality. Prince had folks to stay in earlier, but we enjoyed such wonderful support, and I thank you.
And folks, that is our evening. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks again to Becca and the Delta Township Library for hosting this year's panel discussion. Please take some treats and some drinks with you, please, and good night.
I'm gonna catch you.
You gotta gather them. We're gonna take